first-time homebuyers, welcome back to Better Call Jenn, the podcast. I'm Jen, your host and local South Florida realtor. Today, we'll be discussing step 3 in the home buying process, home inspections. We have a special guest, Luis Sanchez, owner and certified home inspector of Reliable Inspections. Hey, Luis. Thank you for joining me today again.
It's my pleasure, Jen, whenever you need me.
I am super appreciative that you agreed to do this again. And honestly, it didn't surprise me. It really didn't. You're always so helpful, responsive, and your positivity is overall amazing.
We try.
Now, all that being said, I wasn't really looking forward to meeting you the first time that I met you, which was like a little over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember
I heard
that?
the story. I do remember the story. It was in that condo there in, I think it was by
Edgewater.
By Edgewater, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
our
yes.
lovely Francis that introduced us. So the reason I wasn't looking forward to meeting you is because I already had a home inspector back then, and I kind of knew what to expect from him. So I was kind of nervous. I was nervous about who you were going to be and how you were going to send your reports and all that. But you ended up being like amazing. And a year later, I refer you 100%, really.
I mean, I don't blame you. It's a nerve-wracking thing for realtors. You never know who you're going to get. You never know, what level of experience they have. You never know if they're going to be, related, relationable to the customer. You just don't know, So that's why I try to make it the way I like to make this job work the way we do it. Just makes it easy for everybody. But I mean, I agree. You were not wrong in being
thinking
nervous.
that and feeling that way.
Absolutely not.
So the goal today is to give buyers insight on the home inspection process, why hire a home inspector, what you check, what you don't check during the inspection, the cost, as well as what's a 4-point inspection and wind mitigation. So if you're ready, we'll just jump right into the questions.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So what should a buyer be looking for in a home inspector?
Okay, so what I like to tell people all the time, whether it's going to be me you hire or somebody else, you should, number one thing to do is always go through somebody recommended, okay? Somebody that your realtor has used before, maybe a family member, close friend, something of that nature. If you're going online and just randomly Googling a home inspector, you just don't know where you're going to get. So some home inspectors that don't get that much work, they spend a lot of their money, getting their names up on top of Google, things of that nature. So not all of them. That you could get a good one from Google. I'm not saying they're all not going to be good, but for the most part, I always strongly recommend that you go with somebody that somebody else has used already. Like that you can kind of get a feel for the person, you know what's going on. Because if you're just going randomly like that, you just don't know what is, you just don't know who's going to pull up.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Would you say that having a certified home inspector is important? Like, what's the difference between just a random person that you find that might charge you, I don't know, $50 to come out, $100 to come out versus a certified insured home inspector?
Okay, so when you do, somebody recommends them to you and you do find the person that you're going to use, I strongly recommend that you go to myfloridalicense.com, check out their name, make sure they really have a license and that it's valid. Anybody can show you a paper. They might have been a home inspector before. Make sure that their license is valid and make sure that they're insured. Very important. If an inspector is working out there without insurance, it is not the person you want to use. God forbid something happens at that inspection, he falls, he has an issue, whatever, then it could become a big thing for no reason. So all you have to do is ask them for their insurance. You can, if you even want to verify their insurance once they ask it to you, you can call that the company that's on there as their policy. Make sure that their policy is still valid. I recommend people to do that all the time. As you know, when we go to the building, sometimes they ask you for your insurance and your license. And I always have it on my phone. I always send it to you. I always keep it on you because you do not want to use somebody that's not certified.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I asked you for the insurance information because a condo association was asking me for it. And I'm like, hey, when you have a chance at some point today, and I think it was like 5 seconds later, you sent it to me. I'm like, okay, perfect. This works. So
I keep it on my phone. It's just something that you should have. Now, if you ask an inspector for it and he stumbles, in questioning, then, you probably should do your due diligence and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, red flag for sure. All right. So what type of properties do you inspect?
I do pretty much everything. We do condos, we do townhouses, single family homes, multi-family homes, duplexes, triplexes. We even do commercial properties. I have clients of mine that'll buy, 4, 5, 6 unit buildings. They ask me to do the entire building. With pleasure, I do them. The only thing we stay away from is 40-year certifications. We do not do those. When you do a 40-year certification, what I've learned in all the years that I've been in this business is you have to get too many people together. You have to get an engineer together, a roofing contract. You have to get all these people together. And then I'm the one who presents the report. Plus I take all the responsibility. So it just doesn't make any sense to me because I am outsourcing too much work. So I lose too much control of what's actually going on. And that just doesn't work for me. So besides that, any building, I even recently started doing retail. Like I have people on Lincoln Road actually renting units for their business, and they want to see what it looks like. Are they going to have a problem with it once they go and spend all this money and start running their business there? And I'll do those too. I mean, I'm pretty much open to do any sort of inspection.
Awesome. So since we're focusing today on first-time home buyers, typically first-time home buyers are going to purchase a single family home, a townhouse, or a condo. So what's the difference when you're inspecting a single family home versus a condo versus a townhouse?
Well, there's certain differences. So when you're doing a single family house, most of the time you're concentrated on this one house. You have pretty much access to everything. You can walk around everywhere. It's going to be very few times where a neighbor is going to bother you, so you're pretty much wide open. Now, when you do a condo or a townhouse, you have to be very careful because you have to be sensitive to the fact that there's people living next door, there's people living downstairs, so you have to make sure that when you're doing these types of inspections, you have sensitivity that people are living so close. Okay. Also, when you do condo inspections, there's a little bit more work that goes before you get there. You have to contact the association. You have to make sure that if the AC units are on the roof, which most small buildings, 5 stories or less will have them on the roof, that we have access to the roof. Some associations, they're very easy to work with. They'll let you on there. Some are not so easy, as we've learned in our experiences. But you definitely need to do that. If you have a home inspector that you're using and he does not access the roof when you have ACs in the roof, you're going to have an issue because the AC unit, the handler inside the unit could be brand new, but maybe the compressor is 20 years old. And you don't want to find that out later. You want to find that out before you make the purchase, before you do the closing. So, these things are varying issues. Now, it is the inspector's job to explain this to the realtor so the realtor can start contacting the association and get all this done before you get there, not the day of the inspection. It's very hard to access a roof unless they left it open or something like that the day of the inspection.
Can we talk about the last inspection we did? Just because it was like a rare occasion that we couldn't access the roof.
Well, we did access the roof.
Well, we did. We couldn't access it the traditional way.
Very sketchy. So they had a building, it was 2-story. They have a ladder that accesses you to the roof. The problem is the ladder's about 10 feet off the ground. Now, we had to park about 4 blocks away.
It's South Beach, by the way. So we'll explain, parking was a little bit challenging there. We had one parking spot and the buyer took it, of course. We're going to allow him to park there.
So we parked on Lincoln Road.
Yeah.
It happens. So it was a little bit of a sketchy situation. The ladder was a little far away. I had to kind of do a pull up to get up there. But sometimes in these situations, you got to do what you got to do to make sure the client is okay.
Yeah, and I think there was like a garbage container involved. Somehow you stood on a garbage container to get yourself up there.
It was, not your typical inspection, but that's what happens in this business. You're not going to run into the typical inspection every day. You have to make sure you take care of the client and you have to make sure you make them feel secure about what they're buying. It is what it is. Sometimes you got to go that extra mile. Not everybody does it.
No.
Just like a lot of realtors don't do it. But if you want to be successful and you want them to be happy, you have to go the extra mile and you got to do what you got to do. And we got it done the way you always do.
I'm glad that the buyer was very helpful. Like he was there. He was holding that garbage thing for you. And also that's like one of the reasons I love working with you because you're a problem solver. And I feel like I'm the same. So if there's a problem, we're going to find the solution to it. You
have to be a problem solver here. There's a lot of moving parts in a real estate transaction. So you have to make sure that everybody's part of the team, because if you don't, Jen, sometimes we get to the situation where the other realtor, the listing agent, is not playing ball like we are. And then we have to make up for their slack. And although they're getting an equal commission as you are, they're not doing equal work. But, and you run into these problems, you have to come up with a resolution because we have to move forward one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the main difference that I find, which just to recap this bit of conversation between a single family house and then a townhouse and a condo, is that the AC unit is typically on the roof in the smaller buildings, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And in some of the bigger buildings, even the handler is like in the hallway in a locked closet, right? Sometimes it's not inside the unit.
Right. So the bigger buildings, they work on something called a cooling tower. What they have is they have a giant compressor on the roof, and that compressor feeds all the handlers individual units. Now, you will run into a situation where you go to a building and there's a separate door in the hallway to access the handler. So sometimes, believe it or not, I get to the buildings and they don't have the key to the door.
Yeah.
Right. So I always like to tell people, make sure they have the keys and stuff like that so we can check these things out, because these things are very important. You have to understand, if you're in a building, if you're in a building with the AC on the roof and you have to change that AC, two people are not going to walk that unit up there. You have to hire a crane. It becomes an expensive process. So you want to make sure what condition it's in, things of that nature. When the handlers are inside, you also just can't walk that handler into the unit and install it. You have to get permission from the association. So you always want to make sure what condition these units are in. So if they're towards the end of the life, you can at least inform the client, and they already at least have it in mind what they're going to have to deal with in case they have an AC issue.
Absolutely. Okay, so that was really good information. I feel like this is one of the biggest important questions. So what do you check during a home inspection?
Okay, so I do things a little bit different. I like to check everything in the house. I like to start from before I even get there. I like to do my homework before I even get to the house. I like to pull a permit list, see what's been done to the home recently, whether it be any renovations, roof replacement, ACs. I always like to check that first. Also, I like to do research on what the house looks like. So before I even get there, I already know what I'm working with. I like to go back through the Google Maps, year after year, just to see what updates. Have they painted the house? Have they done any remodeling? Have they added something? Just know when I get there what questions to ask the sellers. A lot of inspectors will get there. They will not say one word. They will do the inspection. They will hand you a report. You don't know what's going on. I like to question the seller a lot, just so I can get a feel for them, what they've done, how they've done it. So, these are things that I like to do. Then once I get all that done, I like to do exterior first. I like to get a feel for the house on the outside. I like to check if it has a septic tank. A lot of times people do not even know that the house has a septic tank. The realtors will never know. Yeah, it's crazy. I like to see what kind of electrical they have outside. I like to make sure where the AC is located. I like to do the exterior first. Once I do the exterior, then what I do is I do the house in a circle. I walk inside. I start in the room to the right. I make my way all the way around the house. So like that, you don't miss anything. A lot of home inspectors, especially when they're new, you have to understand that for a home inspector, there's a lot going on at the house, right? They have to speak to the realtor. They have to speak to the listing agent. They have to speak to the buyer. They have to speak to the seller. So sometimes they forget things. So in order for me to not forget anything, I always go in a circle. I go room to room. So I make sure that I don't forget anything. Once I'm done, I also go through all the pictures, make sure I didn't forget anything. I know it sounds OCD, but it's just a way for me to make sure that the client is just taken care of 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's better. It's definitely better to be thorough. And since you brought up the septic tank thing, I actually I want to say 5 days ago, November 1st, there's a new addendum disclosure that the sellers have to disclose that there's a septic tank. So thank God for that, because I want to say at least 2 transactions this year, it's been extremely questionable whether there was one. When was the last time that they emptied it out? When did they service it? And it's just so frustrating. And just to be clear, that's not your realm, right? You don't inspect septic tanks, although we can find a separate professional for that, right?
Right. So what happens is a lot of times when you got to inspect the septic tank, they bring that truck with the pump in it.
Yeah.
And they'll pump some out. They'll start checking. What I do is a lot of the main reason why a lot of people that doesn't come up till later is a lot of realtors, when they're checking boxes on a listing, when the listing agent is listing a property, they automatically go sewer, and they never ask. And then it becomes a problem later. So I always tell the listing agents to make sure, ask them, make sure, because you understand, like with your friend Shayla, we went to a house one day and they swore her that it was sewer. And I told Shayla, listen, I've been in this neighborhood before. I'm 100% positive that it's not. I went, I found the septic tank, and then, it becomes tough from there because now you're bringing up a problem to the buyer that they didn't know before.
Mm-hmm.
They're already going to have to pay for the inspection. So it's better to get these things out of the way before you get there.
Yeah.
Now, what I do is, although I don't pump it out and I don't open it up to inspect it, I do check the clean out, see what it looks like. I make sure that there's no spillage going on in the yard, that there's not a weird smell. So I do like an overall through the outside, but I always 100% recommend that they bring a person to clean, to pump out some, make sure everything's working. These things are very delicate things. A lot of times people don't clean them out for years.
Yeah.
Septic tanks should be cleaned out, every 3 years. And a lot of people will tell you, oh, yeah, we cleaned it out. But then when you ask them for the receipt, they don't have it.
Nobody ever has it. Yeah, and
Nobody
it depends
ever has
on like how many people live in the property, and
Right.
because some inspectors will tell you like every 1 or 2 years if you have a big family, every 3 years is a good average if it's a big tank. The good thing is that nowadays, in 10 plus years ago, it used to be a big ticket item to replace.
Right.
It would cost $25,000 to replace a septic tank. So it was hand in hand with replacing a roof. But now apparently they do everything plastic. And
Now there's newer technologies now that they're making it more affordable for you to change it. But it's, it's still a tough thing for a buyer to buy a house. And then all of a sudden they got to dig up the yard.
Absolutely.
And, eventually, hopefully, everything will go to sewer.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is that a lot of times they want to do an assessment through your taxes, and then a lot of people just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But eventually they're going to force everybody to do it because that becomes a pollutant. A lot of Key Biscayne is having some issues with their water, and a lot of it is due to septic tank.
Interesting. So we'll go back to the question of what do you check during a home inspection? Obviously the roof.
Absolutely. Roof is number one because it's the biggest ticket item in the house.
Yeah.
So before I get there, I like to check for permits. Make sure they have a permit. A lot of times I get to a house and the roof looks brand new and they don't have a permit. And then I will ask them, do you have the permit information? Well, no, we did it without a permit. Now, this is my number one recommendation to people. If you're going to put a roof on your house, do not do it without a permit. Whatever money you save in the permit, you're going to end up paying additional in insurance every single year. So when you do wind mitigation or a 4-point, it asks you for a permit number. Once you put that permit number, depending on what year the permit number is from, is a discount that you get every year because they know that a certified roofer did it and they know they went through these steps in order to do it correctly. When you just do it without a permit, listen, you're opening yourself into a lot of trouble. Not only are you going to lose that discount, but you could do the roof. The minute you finish it, the city could have been watching you. They will make you remove the roof, pay fines, pay the permit anyways. So it's really not a good thing to do. I definitely recommend everybody use a permit.
Yeah, you might be able to avoid the city or your taxes, right? And then you get hit on the insurance side. It's to me, it's a no-brainer to just get your permits, people. Like don't skip on that. So what do you look for when you're up there? Aside from the age of the roof, right? What are you looking for because you actually get up on the roof and you inspect it?
Yes, absolutely. So 1-story houses, we always get on top. We're looking for what condition are the shingles in, or the tiles, or the flat roofs. Are there missing shingles? Are there cracked tiles? The roll roofing, which is the flat roof, it starts to bubble up with the Florida sun after a while. So we're looking for these things to make sure. Now, when it comes to a secondary roof, I use a 4K HD drone. So what we do is, instead of getting on the 2nd-story roof, because it's so dangerous, we use the drone. We take 4K pictures. We make sure that everything looks fine. And anyways, the way we tell how a roof, if it's leaking or not, is through the attic. Mm-hmm. That's really where you can really get a good indication of what's going on in damage, because anybody can cover up, the top of a roof and put some new shingles on it or stuff like that. But we definitely like to be hands-on, take a lot of pictures, make sure what everything looks like, make sure everything looks uniform. That's really the key to everything.
Yeah, and at the end, you're going to be giving a very extensive report to the buyer, and everything has photos of what you've seen, which is amazing, because obviously the buyer isn't going to be going up on the roof with you. I mean, Has a buyer ever gone up on the roof with you?
No, that is
Okay,
a tough.
my buyers haven't done that.
They've asked, but you cannot allow a person who doesn't get on roofs every day to
No,
just
no,
use your
no.
ladder and get on the roof.
Yeah, your
You
insurance
just,
won't cover that.
yeah, you just can't. But yeah, another thing I was gonna say too, going on pictures, if you're using a home inspector and you're getting a report and you're getting, 20 pictures in a report, you probably should use somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
A typical home, 2,000 square feet, just to say a number, I do about 200, 250 pictures at the location. It's just, you have to be hands-on in the situation. You can't, when you're looking at your home inspector, he better be into the job and he better look like he knows what he's doing, because if not, this is going to cost you money in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And the point of this part of the process is to be as informed as possible, because if you're under contract, I'm going to assume that most contracts are like this. This is how I set up mine. Your contract is contingent on the inspection period. So typically you have, in the old days, I was having a conversation with Miriam about this last week in the podcast. We used to have like 14 days for a home inspection, and then it dwindled down to 10. And now we're at around 7. And even 7 is like a really long time for sellers to agree on. But you want to gather as much information as possible during that time, because if you don't like what you hear, that is your exit time. This is the time to just say, forget it. Let's go find something else. This is not what I want.
Absolutely. Now, I will say that home inspectors do have a hard time in a lot of houses, because we do houses that are vacant. Those are super easy. There's no furniture. I can see everything. Other times we go to houses where you can barely walk inside, and these are things that I explain, to the buyers. It's very hard for a home inspector to do his job when the house is full of stuff from one end to the other. Every closet I open, every room I walk into, so it's a lot of times I will explain to them, listen, I saw what I could, but I cannot guarantee that once you start moving all this furniture, that there's not going to be broken tiles, that there's not going to be damaged walls, because it's just literally impossible to see these things, So, a lot of buyers also have to understand that when the house is like that, you are taking a risk in what you're buying, but there's not much we can do. It's literally impossible to move all that stuff out of the way. A lot of times when you're doing older sellers, you have to be very delicate of what you move in their house. They're very touchy. You have to be very sensitive to these older people, because you don't want to do something that's going to upset them in the house, and, it's going to cause something in the house. So, these things are very hard that inspectors have to deal with, but, we work with it.
Yeah, I know you always do. That kind of goes into the next question of what you don't inspect in a property, but I want to stay focused on what you do for right now. So we know you inspect the roof, the attic. What else is on your list? Oh, the septic tank, of course. So what would be next that you focus on?
Important things in a house: AC units, water heaters, all the plumbing. What does the plumbing look like? Does it look like it's been replaced recently? And when I say plumbing, I mean all plumbing. I mean any visual plumbing. Obviously, it's impossible for me to see underground cast iron piping. It's just impossible. But anything visible, all the outside, where the hoses go, where the main is, under all the sinks, it's very important to get a look at that. We also want to see, I do something that a lot of inspectors don't do, which is I check all walls and doors for moisture. Okay. It is not something required for home inspectors. They really have to do it. I just go out of the way to do it, because it literally takes me the entire house an extra maybe 20 minutes in total. But I like to do it because a lot of times one thing people never do, or very few people do, is reseal their windows every couple of years. So what happens is with the heat and the moisture that we have here in South Florida, a lot of that seal will start to break. A lot of the caulking will and then it'll leak inside the window. So what happens is, even though you have leaking inside the window, you want to have the client know that before they buy the house. Okay. So I go through all of it, every single window door. If I find something, I explain to them. Now, it's impossible for me to tell them the extent of the damage without breaking through the drywall, but I can at least alert them to what's going on there, so the problem doesn't become worse.
Yeah.
Because once those leaks, if they leak for a little bit, you can get to it, you can fix the problem. But if you keep letting it leak for years and they don't know about it, it's tough. And then I even have colleagues of mine where I explain that to, and they'll tell me, but why do you waste your time doing that? And it's like, it's not a waste of time. They just don't understand. A client is number one here. Okay. And not only because that client can recommend the other people and you can make money, but you have to put yourself in the situation where you're the buyer. You've been a buyer before. I've been a buyer before. So you would like that same type of help when you're the buyer. Remember, the buyer is a person. especially in a first-time buyer that's dealing with a lot of things, okay? They're dealing with things they've never done before. They're dealing with home inspectors. They're dealing with mortgage brokers. They're dealing with, it's a very stressful process.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you can reduce that stress for them, I feel that it's just something just humanly that you should just do.
Yeah, 100%. So aside from, you know what? The electrical box. Did you say electricity yet?
Electrical panels. That was my next thing.
Okay.
Panels.
Because that's one of the important ones.
Electrical panels are very important. You need to open every single electrical panel, see what they look like inside. How's it wired? Is there some sketchy looking electricity? We all know here in South Florida, everybody's uncle, cousin was an electrician, worked as it in some time. So you want to make sure that's there. Electrical panels also, there's some electrical panels that you pay higher premiums for having that come in older houses. Sylvania panels, Zinsco panels, Challenger panels. These panels they're not in business anymore. So the insurance companies have a problem with them because if you have a problem, then, they have nobody that they can go to. So you pay higher premiums for these panels. You always want to explain that to the client. The panel's wired fine, but it is this kind of panel. The insurance is going to make you pay a higher premium. I always recommend that people change them as soon as they can. Sometimes it's kind of tough because they're expensive. Electrical work is expensive, especially by a qualified, certified contractor. So, but you want to get these things done. But electrical is super, super, super important. You want to make sure that if you're not using me, that your inspector is opening there should never be an excuse for not opening a panel. If there's something out of the way, they should move it out of the way. If it's painted to the wall, you've seen me do it a million times. I will literally cut the panel off the wall, okay? Because you have to be careful.
Yeah, I've seen you peel through paint. I've seen you climb on kitchen cabinets. I've seen you deal with dead roaches that just love to live in the electrical panel for some reason. So yeah, you got to get through it all.
You got to get through it all. So that's really the main things, the electrical panels, the AC units, the roof, and all the plumbing, and along from that, you want to go, once you're in the room, every time I go through the room, I make sure I check every outlet. I make sure I check every window for moisture. I make sure, I like to take the room. I like to divide the house per room and just go at that room individually. Like that, what's going on, what's not going on. Are there any broken tiles? If there are broken tiles, why are they broken?
Mm-hmm.
Did somebody drop something on them? Is there a pattern of maybe that, that they didn't do the tile work correctly, which happens here in South Florida more than I can. We'll be here all day talking about that. So you want to go room to room. You want to make sure that, and it's just, it's a tough process for a lot of people. I enjoy it. So it's just, I know it sounds strange that I enjoy a job like this, but I love it. It's weird to explain, but I just love it.
No, I can tell. And we're going to get to the next question in a minute on how much something like this costs. But to me, like listening to everything, and I'm involved in this every single day, but I feel with everything of my being that it's so worth the money to just
1,000%
get a professional to tell you all these details. I mean, you don't even, a buyer, especially a first-time home buyer, even me, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I can walk into a property and tell you a handful of things just visually, right? But having a professional with the right tools and the right experience, it's priceless.
Yeah, listen, I see more houses than anybody does. I actually, one of my biggest clients is a home builder. This guy builds custom homes, beautiful houses. And what he does is when the house is done, before anything else, he has me come in and do an inspection to make sure that nothing slipped through the cracks. He tells me, listen, and these are brand new homes. So you would figure that everything's, done correctly. It's not going to be a problem. But he is so OCD about the way he builds houses that he tells me, listen, go through the house, do an inspection. Let me know what you think. And then I do. And I find things all the time. I tell him, look, and then what he does is he goes over it, he fixes everything before the house even goes up for sale. So even somebody like that builds houses uses somebody like me.
That's rare. That's great. I want to know where he builds because that's a good sign.
Yeah, he builds custom homes like in the Keys and stuff like that. So, he always wants, these are big dollar clients. So he wants to make sure that they're happy and they're not going to have a little dumb issue over something that he could have, paid a certain amount of money. It was worth it to him. It's just a great thing to do.
Yeah. So typically how much does a home inspection cost?
Okay. So home inspections are all by square footage of the home. Obviously apartments are a little bit less because there's no attic work. once I don't have to go in the attic, I obviously reflect, the price on that. Small apartments usually start $275, $300. And then it can go up to, like the other day I did a house. The property had 2 houses on it. One was 6,000 square feet. The other house was 3,800 square feet. So you're dealing with a big property. That was a $1,500 job. It all depends on the square footage of the house and how much work is involved. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It all goes by that. It's all square footage based. But yeah, a little small apartment, it's cool, 275, 300, and it includes everything. So some inspectors will give you a base price, but they will not include wind mitigation in the 4-point that you need for every purchase on an insurance. Apartments do not require a 4-point due to the fact that the roof, most of the plumbing, and stuff like that are association related and building related. But you want to make sure that if you're going to get an inspection that they include that, because you're going to need that. Sometimes there's these certain type of home inspectors that will give you a price and you'll be like, oh, wow, that's a great price. But then when you need the 4-point and wind mitigation, they'll charge you an extra $200.
Yeah.
And then now the total price is not great.
Exactly.
And they know you need it, but they work differently. We do upfront pricing. Mm-hmm. We'll let you know what it's going to cost, what it's going to include, everything. We do everything upfront. Now, a lot of times there's certain things that we include that a lot of people don't. If you're a realtor that works with me on a regular basis, I do a courtesy second inspection. Okay, so if we find anything wrong in the house, we find a double tap on an electrical panel, some broken tiles, whatever the case may be, I will actually include the second inspection for free. If it's not a constant client, the average is $75 to $100 reinspection fee. That's normal in the industry. That's an industry standard. Most inspectors will charge you every time. Again, when it's somebody like you that I work with you all the time, I just feel that it's a courtesy that I should pass to the clients. It takes me no time to drive over there, show up, fix the report for them and just move forward.
Yeah, I know. I really appreciate it. I know my customers do too, because nobody's ever had one single complaint about you. And then they're like, oh my God, but he came out a second time. Or even after, I think one young lady that we helped in South Beach,
oh, yes.
Remember, she called you after she closed because the property was filled with a lot of items, especially in the closet space. And when the homeowner vacated, the homeowner was there like 20 years, I think, the property was in good condition, but she still wanted you to come out and
yeah, it was fine. It's like I said, we do extra stuff for the customer. We also give you a permit list. I run permit lists for all properties anyways. So once I got it, I have no problem emailing it to you so that you can have it. It's just, these are little extra things that we like to do. We're a different type of company. Okay. A lot of people out there are trying to give you a low price, but they also give you the lowest service. We are not the most expensive company, but we're also not the cheapest, but we try to give you the highest quality service. We always responsive. Jen, you've worked with me for a long time. I can be in a roof, in an attic. I might not pick up the phone, but I will send you back a text. Give me a few minutes. Responsiveness is key here.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, unfortunately, some inspection companies, once you pay that fee, it is very hard to contact them again for any updates. It's just tough. It's not my way of running the business. I run it different.
Yeah, I like it. That's why I always call you. So how do you feel about having the buyer present during inspections?
Great question. Okay. So a lot of inspectors, the buyer bothers them while they're doing the inspection. I am the total opposite. Okay. You have to understand this person, especially a first home buyer, has never seen a home inspection report in their life. So if they're not there or you tell them, oh, no, you don't have to be there, whatever, and you just hand them this report, it's literally like if it was in a foreign language. It's going to be impossible for them it's very hard to understand the report. I love when the client is there. Sometimes they don't have to be there the entire time. They can show up towards the end. It's fine. When I'm done with my inspection, I like to give them a walkthrough of the entire home. This is what we found. This is what we saw. This is major. This is not that major. So like that, when they get the inspection report, they can say, look at the picture and the description and say, okay, Louis explained this to me. Louis explained that to me. So not only does it help them understand better, but it helps me also because I don't have to be on the phone with them for an hour later explaining everything to them. They pretty much can remember, okay, Louis said this, Louis said that. So it makes it a lot smoother transition. Also, I tell realtors all the time, I have so many realtors that do not show up to an inspection. Okay. The realtor,
I don't understand that.
You have to understand that if you're there, we can nip a problem in the bud right away and it doesn't become a firestorm later. Sometimes I see it a million times that the realtor doesn't show up. There's a little tiny problem. It storms into this huge problem. The buyer cannot understand why the realtor wasn't there. And it's just, and I get it. Sometimes I get it. There's emergencies where you guys cannot show up. But for the most part, you guys should always show up to inspection. Also, you might have an inspector that does not know what he's doing. Like I've told you before, Jen, when you're if you're on the listing and you feel that something weird is going on in an inspection, call me, FaceTime me, ask me, Louis, listen, I feel weird about this. What do you think? When I work with realtors on a regular basis, this is an ongoing, I don't have to charge you every time I help you. This is an ongoing thing. I like to always make sure, please, realtors, make sure that you go to your inspection. You will lose a deal and you will lose your commission eventually by not going to it.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And even though I don't love when the listing agent is there all the time, like me being on the buyer side, most of the time it is convenient and it's helpful. So I don't know if you remember the Miami Shores sale that we did.
Absolutely.
You remember that one?
420 94th Terrace or something like that. They emailed me the other day.
Oh, they did. They're the sweetest. I have to message them.
They're putting impact windows, and I think they fixed the back roof or something. They want me to come back up.
Oh, awesome. Well, when we were there was just, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 really minor things that we would consider minor, right? And they were super smart buyers and very educated people, so they understood things. They didn't panic or anything. But one particular thing that I remember was something with the water heater. It was some sort of valve, right?
Yes. So the water heaters, when they're the ones with the tank, not the tank ones, they have an emergency release valve. It's called the TPR valve. So in case it comes under pressure or it's going to have a problem, it'll dump the water out through there and it won't explode inside the house. Now, insurance requires you to either put it into a drain or to the exterior. So like that, if it does have a problem, it doesn't dump all the water into whatever room it's in, whatever closet it's in or whatever, and doesn't cause damage inside the house, hence saving them money in case of an emergency. So they had that problem. It's not a big deal. You either drill a hole through the wall, put it outside, you can dump it into a drain. It's not really a big deal. Any plumber can definitely, fix that for you, for not too crazy amount of money. They did have that problem, and they got it fixed right away. They also had a double tap in one of the electrical panels.
Exactly. So to my point, the listing agent was there at the house during the inspection period. And we all came out to the little living dining area and we were just discussing openly, hey, XYZ needs to be done.
Absolutely.
And immediately she said, no problem. I'll tell the seller. And it was like, there was no negotiating. There was no like, let's try to ask for something and see what they say. It was just so easy. And it happens more often than you think if you have all parties there willing to discuss.
Remember, it's like the old saying, if you put 5 people in a room and you start a story on one side, when the story gets to the other side, it is not going to be the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have everybody there together, it eliminates that problem of me having to tell you and then you having to talk to the listing agent, the listing agent talking to the seller, and then it coming back our way. It just becomes a whole thing. So if everybody's there, it just becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So how long can an inspection take?
Okay. So this is one problem that I hear a lot. A lot of times I'll work for somebody and they'll ask me, why are you taking so long? And it makes me laugh. And I'll say, why? Why do you ask that? And they say, well, the last time we bought a house, the inspector was only there for 30 minutes. And I'll say, well, how big was the house? Oh, 2,500 square feet. And that's where I start laughing. Okay. A qualified inspector that's been doing it for a long time, obviously, it becomes easier and your timing becomes better. They should take about 45 minutes for every 1,000 square feet of the house. Okay. So that is about average. Now, if you have a newer inspector, he might take an hour and 15 minutes for every 1,000 square feet. But for a qualified, experienced inspector, it is 45 minutes for every 1,000 square feet. This should give him enough time. So again, if you're buying a house that's 2,000 square feet, the guy definitely should be there for at least an hour and a half.
Excellent. Yeah. And I bring this up because buyers typically work during the day. And
Absolutely.
That's when inspections are typically done. Like every once in a while, we'll get something late in the afternoon or evening. But now with like the time change, that almost becomes impossible because you need to be able to see what you're doing, for example, up on the roof. So some buyers, they take the day off or they'll take half a day or a couple of hours. But a good suggestion is what you mentioned earlier is they can always come at the tail end of the inspection, kind of like when you're done, and then you do that walkthrough to show them the worrisome or the.
Absolutely. They're going to be bored following me around the entire time. So that's what I like to tell them, or if not, if they want to be there the whole time, that's fine. I know you like to talk to them about the house and stuff like that. And then I just give them a walkthrough. It's just a walkthrough should be mandatory. If an inspector's not giving you a walkthrough, it's not good.
Yeah. I love seeing everything that's happening in a house.
Of course, as you should.
I'm nosy.
No, but it's not even really about being nosy. It's the more educated you are, it's the better, qualified you are to help your clients.
No, it is true because after you see, let's say, not the roof itself, but the fascia board, right, of a house that's rotten, for example, and it's like you're standing there, you're pointing it out versus a good, clean version. All of a sudden, I can walk up to any house and be like, "Oh, that's going to need to be replaced." But if I'm not there present, seeing what's going on, I can't help. With properties that we're just looking at, like we're not even under contract yet, right? We're just looking at a property and I'm already pointing out things that you would typically see in an inspection.
Right. And by doing that, you're saving the client money because, obviously, if you go to a property and you guys saw 3 different properties and one, the fascia board was destroyed, to eliminate that one out of the way and we don't have to charge them for no reason.
Yeah.
That's why I always tell people, like if you're a realtor, you should always be there. I go to multi-million-dollar sales and never met the listing agent. It's a crazy thing. I don't know how they do it. More power to them, but I just don't know how they do it.
Oh man, I know sometimes we can't be in 2 places at the same time, but I feel like I personally I just try to prioritize things, and I'm lucky now that I feel like I have a little team. That I have my assistant Lara that's helping me, and it's almost like I'm 2 people now.
team is important. It just definitely is. It's just you can't do it all by yourself.
Yeah. Well, that took me 22 years to figure out.
Hey, it happens.
I tried to do it all by myself.
Listen, me too. It took me forever to find my business partner. And you finally, at some time, you find them and then you just move forward with those people and it just is what it is.
Yeah, life is better. That's what it is.
No, it is.
Shout out to Lara. Okay, so let's talk about we're almost wrapping up, by the way. Let's talk about the 4-point inspection and why buyers need one.
Okay, so 4-point inspection doesn't only come when you buy. The insurance now, as time goes on, insurance is just going to become tougher and tougher to get. They're going to want to see what all the components that they look for in the house look like. So even after you purchase the house, usually about every 2 years, they're going to ask you for an updated 4-point. Okay, so what the 4-point includes is your roof condition, what it looks like, what my estimated life remaining is. So insurance is always going to want a minimum of 3 years of estimated life remaining on the roof. If you don't have a minimum of 3 years, they will not insure you. Now, sometimes I get to a house, they have 20 broken tiles. You do not qualify for those 3 years. But what you can do is you can get that fixed. You can get those tiles replaced. I can come back out. Once everything looks good, then we can update your estimated, life remaining. It's not a big deal. All your visual plumbing, anything under the sinks, kitchen, bathrooms, toilet shutoff valves, your main valves outside, anything that's plumbing related. They're also going to want to see what your ACs look like. What year are they from? What condition are they in? Outside and inside. So your compressor and your AC handler. And most importantly, your electrical panels. What do they look like? What brand are they? What's the estimated time they've been installed? What does your electrical meter look like? So what we do is we take all these pictures and all this information and we make a presentation on a separate report. It's not the same as your home inspection report. And like that, you can present that to the insurance. An underwriter can take a look at it and say, okay, well, they have all this new stuff and everything that's good. And then that's how they determine what your premium is going to be. So for example, if you go to a house that has a 30-year-old roof, a 20-year-old AC, 30-year-old panels, you're obviously going to pay a higher premium than somebody who's updated these things. The insurance, what they want is they're going to force you eventually to update these things because it becomes a lower risk for them as your stuff becomes updated. A couple things. We spoke about those panels that the insurance has, troubles with. There's also plumbing that they have issues with, polybutylene plumbing. I know you always say that that's hard to say.
I'm not even going to try.
That is a plumbing that it was a miracle plumbing, in the 80s. It was very easy to install. Anybody could install it. But as years go by, they realize that it's just hose material and it just starts cracking and it becomes a major thing. Some houses do have them. They'll give you insurance. You're going to pay a higher premium. You can get it removed. It's about a $5,000 to $7,000 job to get it redone. I always recommend people to redo it because, if it starts leaking in the house, it'll damage your drywall. It becomes a huge issue. So
because it's not plumbing that's underneath. It's in your walls.
Yeah, usually it runs in the walls through the attic. Once I go in the attic, I can almost always see it. There are times where sometimes I go into an attic and there's so much insulation I can barely pop my head in there. That's sometimes a red flag. So I always write in the report that due to the year of the house, it could possibly have it. None was noted, but sometimes it's just impossible to see.
Yeah.
So those are the four main things. So it's going to be AC, HVAC, it's going to be electrical, it's going to be roof, and it's going to be plumbing that goes into your 4-point.
Hence why it's called 4-point. And then what is a wind mitigation report?
Okay, so wind mitigation for the insurance assesses what is the risk in your house, okay? Whether you have, what kind of protection do you have in case a hurricane comes and the wind coming in the house? Now, it could be impact windows and doors. It can be accordion shutters. It can actually be the older metal shutters that you screw in, as long as they're all Miami-Dade County approved, which is something that's hard for people to understand. So it doesn't matter whether you live in Dade, Broward, or Palm Beach County. Due to Hurricane Andrew, Miami-Dade sets a standard. So once you're Miami-Dade County approved, that's really what they're looking for. Okay. Again, like I said, you can get the same credit either way you do it. Obviously, impact windows are the best way to do it because although it's the most expensive way, you don't have to worry about putting up shutters. You don't have to worry about if the shutters are going to come off the roof. You can see outside during the storm, which is very weird to be in a storm. If you've ever been in one with everything shuttered down, you don't know what is going on. It reduces noise from the outside. It reduces energy costs. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a lot less AC leaking outside. It's very good for protection also. If you've ever seen videos of somebody trying to break into a house with impact windows, it's very hard.
Yeah.
Okay. And it adds value to the house. It as a realtor. Once you get a client and they're between two houses and one of them has full impact windows and the permits have already been pulled and the jobs have already been done, it's a no-brainer. They're going to go that way. Might be a little more, but it's just worth the trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. So to the insurance, they want to see what you have. They also want to see the year of your roof so they can see, under what protocol it was done. They want to also know the angle of your roof. So some roof have typical, looks like an open ladder frame. Those are a little bit more expensive than if you get a hip roof. A hip roof is when all angles go down in a certain way, and then it's harder for the wind to pick it up. So we take all this information and we present it to the insurance company, and then they'll get, accordingly, they will charge you. Another thing that we do that a lot of inspectors don't do. A lot of inspectors will get to your house, they'll write you a report. They won't even say a word to you. What we do is we explain to you how you can reduce your premiums. Okay. I cannot tell you how many times I go to a house, they have full impact windows and they're missing one door or one tiny window and they're losing the entire discount towards that window. And when I explain it to them, they seem confused because they'll be like, well, wait, I've had 2 or 3 other inspectors here throughout the years. Nobody's ever said that. And I'm like, well, I'm not like the other inspectors. Why would I want you to spend money on a premium that you don't need to spend when you can just fix the problem with something minor? It never makes sense to me, but I hear it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like some home buyers are caught by surprise after they purchase, right? And like you said, after a couple of years, they have to redo these forms. And then if I'm not mistaken, the insurance companies will send somebody out, right? To visually,
sometimes,
I don't know if they do it all the time or sometimes.
Sometimes they will send their own person just to see everything. A lot of times they won't even bother you. They'll just go by, take some pictures of the outside and keep moving. Other times they'll tell you they need to schedule, inside so they can take a look at what's going on. The insurance companies, like I tell them, they're very unpredictable because so much is going on their end. And it's just it just gets crazy. And then a lot of times you need a new 4-point and a wind mitigation because you're trying to change carriers. So sometimes you have an insurance company for a while. Your bill from one year to another will be thousands more. Mm-hmm. So you got to move to another carrier. So before the other carrier can take you, they need a 4-point and a wind mitigation. That's a good part of our business too, where we do a lot of those specifically for those. And then the wind mitigation, they'll allow you to use the same one for about 3 years. 4 points. They used to be 3 years. Now every year they're trying to make you get one.
Really?
Yes, because they just want to make sure. And this is another thing I want to stress to people that they might not know. If you have a small problem in your house, if you have a minor leak in the roof, if you have a minor leak under a sink, you can usually address these problems for not so much money and not file a claim. You have to remember, filing a claim is a tough situation. It takes long to get paid. A lot of times they're not going to want to pay. You're going to have to go through all this stress. And then once you have a claim on your file, your insurance is always going to be at a higher premium. Mm-hmm. So I tell people all the time, if you have a small roof leak and you can get it fixed for $500, it is worth every penny to pay to fix it yourself. I get it. You pay insurance, you want to do a claim, I get it. But if it's not a major storm or some type of damage like that, I recommend people to just go ahead and fix it themselves. In the long run, you'll be better off.
I mean, especially here in South Florida, we don't have that many insurance companies to pick from.
Oh, now, I mean, now it's just basically Citizens. And then, you can use State Farm or if you have Allstate or stuff like that. But like Allstate, they don't even cover houses that are not built. I think it's after 2005.
Yeah.
So they won't even cover you. It's very challenging and insurance-wise.
That's definitely going to be on the podcast in the next few episodes. I'm going to try to get somebody on here. I have Anthony in mind. Hopefully he'll cooperate and want to pop in and give us some insight. Luis, I want to thank you so much for doing this twice.
And if we have to do it a third time, whatever you need, Jenna, I'm more than happy to take time out of my schedule.
Don't jinx us.
I'm more than happy to take time out of my schedule and just, bring information to the people, because I feel like people are just uninformed. It's just the smartest person I deal with is just uninformed. And these are things that they should know, just, be careful who you use. Make sure that they have make sure they make sure they are who they say they are.
Absolutely.
Check their qualifications. Don't just go by a business card. Make sure that, and another thing I'll tell you, a lot of people automatically, number one thing they go to is Google reviews, which is great. If you want to use Google reviews, that's fine. We have to understand, anybody can get Google reviews built up. Anybody can get a negative Google review. As you know, my situation, Jen, I personally have one negative Google review.
That's driving you crazy.
It's driving me insane because it's not from an actual client. If it was from an actual client, I accept it. It is what it is. I'll try to fix it moving forward. It is from somebody I have never, ever done an inspection for.
It's so frustrating.
And Google will not remove it, although I called Google and told them I will provide you with every single file of every client I've ever had. And they will not remove it. So I know Google reviews are great, but don't automatically go by that, because you just never know what it is. Use it as part of your research, but don't make it your only research.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great advice. I think this episode has been extremely informative. It'll definitely help first-time home buyers, which is our focus. And it'll help them understand the buying process a little bit better. So thank you. To wrap this up, do you want to tell us the best way to reach you?
You guys can reach me by phone or by text, 305-896-8712. You guys can email me at reliableinspections17@gmail.com. Or if you want to look at our website, it is reliableinspectionsinc.com. You can reach me through there also. Anything you guys need. Remember, it could be just a question. Just because you're not hiring me at the moment does not mean you cannot call and ask me a question. Whatever you guys need, I've been more than happy to help you guys.
Amazing. Thank you.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too.